scenario. It's a COVID scenario. Of course, it's a COVID scenario. That's what we talk about these days. Let's get some, I was going to say clarity. I don't think there's anything such thing as clarity when we're talking COVID, when we're talking, tenancies. So say you've got a tenant and they've tested positive for COVID-19. So they've told you that. Now, the scenario that's been put in front of us is that the tenant's now behind in their rent. They've been given notice today. So they're given notice today that the property's going on the market for sale. Okay, so and then in that conversation of telling that person that the property's going on the market for sale, the tenant informed that she and her family had tested positive for COVID over the last couple of days. Okay, so as a property manager, head in hands, what are we going to do? Okay, are you in your rights as a property manager, as an agent, to request a copy of that positive test result and the New South Wales Health email that they get advising her what her and her family must do during that time? Well, I think you are. I mean, and even if they reject, say, well, we're not giving you that. That's private. That's information. If they want to be considered as an impacted tenant, they're going to have to give you evidence that they're impacted. So are they getting a disaster payment? Then, if they're getting a disaster payment, that kind of gives you that they have tested positive and they're going down that path. So whilst they're getting that disaster payment, that has to be incorporated into, are they, down in their household income, and are they an impacted tenant? Remembering that an impacted tenant still has to pay 25% or a quarter of their rent. So she's now as a possible impacted tenant, hasn't provided the evidence. And remember, I say it again, to be considered as an impacted tenant, they have to provide the evidence that they have been impacted by COVID-19. So she's fallen behind in her rent because she's unable to work. The disaster payment is not enough to cover the cost of her rent and all of her other bills. And, the question is there anything in place for rental relief for her at such times? Well, obviously, there's the moratorium in terms of she can't be evicted until 11 November. So that's now in until the 11th of November. So you'd want the copy of the test. Yes, that's a reasonable question to ask. Get any other evidence in terms of, is she an impacted tenant? Make that call. If she is impacted or the family is impacted, then the landlord can then, on the other side of that equation, claim the support payment for landlords. And that's up to $4,500 now obviously over a period of time. And your advice back to your landlord, who's about to become your vendor, is obviously, we're going to have to put this on hold. The property is now contaminated. We're dealing with a freeze on evictions until the 11th of November if that tenant and that family is tagged as an impacted tenant because of whatever evidence they give you. So you've got a whole lot of things to consider here. So if they're impacted, yes, you need the evidence. Yes, we think it's a reasonable question to ask for a copy of the test and what email they got, so you can actually help them. And I mean, obviously you're doing that in the point of view of, let's get you as an impacted tenant, let's get you some help here so you're not constantly behind, and let's work out an answer here. So, and then talk to the vendor, about how you're going to be dealing with that. The next question we got was, would you need to disclose when you actually finally do get possession of the property and you are selling that property, would you need to disclose this as significant information? That the tenants that are still in the property have previously had COVID, or if they've left the property, what's happened there? So yeah, you would actually need to disclose it. We have actually asked this question of fair trading in the past, and whilst I know it comes from not from a policy perspective, and it didn't come out in Property Matters as an official statement, it was what was said to us from customer service perspective of fair trading. It's significant information. People coming in would want to know that. So, and also you would need to have a deep clean. And you would, at the point of disclosing that somebody had been in the property, the previous tenant had COVID and members of the family had COVID, you would hand over the deep clean certificate to show that yes, they had it, yes, they've gone, this is how long ago it was, here's the deep clean certificate, let's move on. So you've disclosed it, you've counteracted it with the deep clean certificate, and you've moved on. So who pays for the deep clean? It's the tenant. No, sorry, it's the landlord. Yes, they could ask the tenant to pay for it. I would suggest if they're already behind in their rent, that's not going to happen. Will that be covered by landlord insurance? Ask the question of the landlord insurance. Check the policy, ask the question of whoever the landlord is insured with, and fingers crossed that they actually are do hold landlord insurance. So not saying that every policy will cover that, but some will. So hopefully that's given some discussion around that point. As I said, very difficult to get clarity on that level at the moment because, it's new. And we can only go with what is reasonable. Remember, if something ever goes to tribunal, the question is, did you act in a reasonable manner? Was it reasonable for you to do that? Is it reasonable that you asked for a copy of the positive test result and the New South Wales Health email advising that tenant and their family members that they are COVID positive? Yes, it's reasonable. So, and because you're trying to help that tenant, work down the path of, are they an impacted tenant? Can they get some relief here? And then ultimately the next step on that is, can the landlord get some relief to assist that? So it's a whole circle that you are in the centre of and managing. So good luck to that office. And thank you for sending that through. Rosemary and I had a good long talk about this today, and it's kind of where we're sitting on that.